Gamebreaker TV.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to GuildCast, the Guild Wars 2 show for February 9th, 2012. You're watching Gamebreaker TV. I'm Gary Gannon. Today we got lots and lots of viewer questions. No news is good news with Gary News, and there's lots of questions. So let's just do a ton of questions. First, from Massively.com, it's the Beard Man himself, Mr. Shawn Schuster. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How you doing, Gary?
Good. The beard is looking mighty fine. How you doing, Beard? I'm doing okay. All right, Ned, moving on, joining us again for the second time, but this week in perfect 12.1 surround sound, is it THQ or THX? It's THX.
THX.
Elizabeth, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
I am doing so good, and now we can hear your lovely voice this week.
It's a relief.
It is, and because I needed some griefing, I know he just kind of beats on me every week. We needed some P versus P perspective up in this piece. We got Mr. Ed Park. How are you, sir?
What's up, Griefer? How are you, sir?
I'm doing better.
Professor Griefer.
Professor Griefer.
Yes.
Professor Griefer. All right, children. Sit down, take your seats. Be quiet, be quiet. Ed's drunk. Be quiet. Here we go. First question. There's not really a whole lot of news this week. That's what I said. There's really just not a whole lot going on out of the ArenaNet camp. Not much Guild Wars 2 news. So I love these Guild Wars 2 viewer questions. We just do a ton of questions. We answer them. And actually, I went through all the notes before the show, and it's awesome. Because you know what? We get a ton of questions by people who don't know what's going on. They're new. Some of them are vets. Let's get into it. All right, Justin Kelly, first up. Justin Kelly says, with no so-called endgame, I'm sure there is still endgame gear or so-called best-in-slot stuff, which is the real endgame. So once I acquire this gear, what would be the point to go back and help some farmer with his rabbit problems? Good question for the player who gets to max level, runs dungeons, gears up. We've talked a lot about max level gear, kind of things like that. Why would he want to possibly go back and do all of these events that he may have missed to help the farmer with his rabbit infestation problem? Elizabeth, any idea?
I think that some people are going to want to do those regardless of their gear. I mean, part of the beauty of the side-kicking down system is that you'll still have fun at any level, and I think that you'll see people like lore hounds or people who really want to just sink into their eyebrows in the story will go back and try and find every single dynamic event in every single quest and do that anyway like they would in any other game.
But much more, I guess, from like a completionist perspective, not really...
Right. Not because they feel they're missing out, just because they want to do everything.
You think there's a way with it, because what is the system called? It's not a bolstering system, but it's a scaling system, right? Do we know if that's going to scale? Are they going to scale events like early events like that, where you're maybe just doing some really low-level kill 10 rat stuff? Is it going to get really difficult if you come back later on?
As far as I know, they actually sidekick players down. So if I'm a level 80 and I'm going to a level 15 area, I will actually go down to where I'm like level 17 or so, effectively, so that I'm not breaking the game for other players.
But they're not. But they're not effectively changing the loot tables at all.
No, not so far as I know.
Shawn, do you think like MMO gamers like will keep doing something like that just for fun? You know, or does there always have to be a shiny at the end of the tunnel?
Fun. What is fun?
We don't like fun. It's a slot machine.
Yeah.
You just kill 10 rats and give me something.
It's the carrot. Yeah, I think there's a select few that will, of course. I would say I'm among those, but yeah, I mean there will be the people who just want to, you know, they have that kind of tunnel vision, they just go for that, and then there will be the ones who want to just play to have fun. But also I think the event system kind of lends itself to a different scenario. You know, there are different outcomes. You know, if the bad guys win, it's going to be different this time instead of the last time you did it. So hopefully that'll mix it up a little bit.
If you look at like games like Left 4 Dead and things like that, I mean, people run the same map over and over and over with their buddies, and there's really no reward at the end of that. I mean, Ed, what do you think? I mean, do you think MMO players would be better off? Like, is it kind of a different mindset, maybe possibly that Guild Wars 2 players have to go into with something like this?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a huge adjustment for people not used to it. You know, one of the first MMOs I played was a game called Meridian 59, and the GM used to spawn these events, which would cause mobs to spawn in the city, and if you didn't go help out the city, it was going to get overwhelmed. So people would actually come and help defend it regardless of level. But that kind of dynamic events, which are relevant regardless of your level, it just doesn't exist in most games. There's no reason to go back, and people get very much used to the whole geared treadmill mindset. Well, I'll only do something if there's some shiny or currency that will help me buy a shiny, and they forget about the whole fun aspect. So I think I think, as Elizabeth and Shawn said, I think there's going to be a lot of interest in the event system because you can, like Elizabeth said, you can get sidekicked down. So and this is really cool too. You don't have to be near level to hang out with people. You could be uber high level and go play with one of your friends, who's playing an alt or just rolled on your server. You can get sidekicked down and do stuff together. Like, oh, check out this rabbit quest. It seems innocuous, but these nasty rabbit buggers come out of the ground. It's pretty funny. But most games you just wouldn't do that because you would just sit there and you just one-shot all the rabbit mob thingies, and it would be, it'd be boring. But in this game, it may actually be fun.
Meridian 59, huh? Showing your age, buddy.
Old school, baby.
Old school. That's serious old school right there. It's a Meridian 59. All right, next question. This one from Nicolas Guzman. Nicolas says, with structured PvP, since structured PvP is in the Conquest game mode, and there were hints of an underwater arena, do you think it possible and probable that there could be underwater objectives? Interesting question. I'm going to throw it to Ed. What do you think first of the possibility of underwater objectives even in your P versus P?
So I think it adds an interesting element where you get not just kind of X and Y axis, but you get Z axis. You can swim up and down. So from that perspective, it could be really interesting. What I would not like to see ArenaNet do is like what NCSoft did in Ion, where they had flying, so everyone was excited. Oh, Z axis combat. This is going to be cool. But in order to fly, you had to have pots. In order to get pots, you had to farm them. So it was more about he who could fly longer or she could fly longer because they farmed the most pots would win in aerial PvP, which was really dumb in my opinion. So as long as I don't have to farm underwater breathing pots.
Oh, there's a breathing apparatus. There's a breathing apparatus that we know of that you don't have healing pots in the game. They've gotten rid of. That's old school, man. That's like Meridian 59 breathing pots. That's nobody does that anymore, man. We have snorkeling gear. Haven't you watched Discovery? Yeah, we can. So no, you wear a breathing apparatus now, and you can actually go underwater for as long as you want. So I don't know. They are. Do you think, Elizabeth? Do you think they could be taking a little bit of a gamble here if they're kind of making underwater like PvP almost a requirement, or could it be viewed as a little bit like gimmicky?
I don't know that I'd want to see an entire map that was underwater, but I think they talked about having entrances or certain objectives, and I think that lends a kind of viable way to spice up the play. It also rewards people who actually done underwater combat. Maybe someone really enjoys it, and that's something that they want to experience. It's important that that be there in World vs. World.
Underwater combat is such a stickler for me. Like I know everybody who's played the game is like, Gary, you're gonna like it. Everybody I know, including myself, hates underwater combat. Shawn, did you get to do any underwater combat when you played at any of the conventions?
No, not yet. But I figured that they're going to do underwater combat a lot differently than you're used to, especially since they're advertising it so much. I mean, what you're used to is you kill something in, let's say, World of Warcraft, and it floats there, and it might look like it could be laying on the ground, it could be floating in the water. It's not really, not a lot of thought put into the underwater versus land. But it seems like the way ArenaNet's doing the Guild Wars 2 underwater combat, I would definitely say that they would be the ones that would make a certain reward just for underwater combat. You know what I mean?
What do you think they could do? Like, what do you?
Maybe starfish. I don't know.
Starfish, nice. Have we seen any more of the physics? We've seen underwater combat. I'm trying to think back if they showed any like real physics. You were talking about like the physics in World of Warcraft and stuff like that, but I don't know. It'd be kind of cool. I could see if there's like certain PvP objectives that have to be taken, or keeps things that are underwater that you and your guild mates or PvP mates have to like sort of coordinate and take control of underwater while other people are doing things on the surface. That could be pretty cool. Ed, you love the Z-axis in Hutball.
Yeah, I think it would be awesome. Like you said, if you had a map where there were both underwater as well as surface objectives and try to coordinate how that works, it would be really complicated. I mean, even take something like in Hutball, it takes a while to get used to the Z-axis nature because you can't just look at the map to see where someone is. You have to look up or down to get a sense and then adjust your tactics accordingly. So I think it could be a lot of fun.
All right, next question from Marcus Partanan asks, what kind of dungeon encounters are you expecting with Guild Wars 2's combat system? Something more interesting than just tank and spank that we're used to? What do you think, Elizabeth? Less tank, more spank?
Less tank, more spank, definitely. Because you don't have the whole idea of just running in and grabbing aggro, you are working a lot more with positional combat and control, which is more control than just saying, hey, hit me, or hit him, hit him. It's actually about where the boss is and where you are and what your team's doing. In the one dungeon that we've seen so far, the Ascalon Catacombs dungeon, they actually had 3 different bosses that were kind of leading up to the end boss, and they were all really varied. So there was one who had really powerful knockbacks, and you were doing all this stuff on top of steep cliffs, and then there were others where you had to keep them from getting close to each other, or else they unlocked new powers. So I think that they're going to look for a lot more diversity in their boss mechanics, which makes it, in the end, a whole lot more rewarding to play.
Have you guys like seen any? Do you think that the boss mechanics are going to feel a little bit more like an action MMO? Kind of like that's the other. We're seeing the 2 big pushes we're seeing are like, the story MMO. You got the BioWare, and then you got the action MMO. The one with the elf ears and the big boobs and like no clothes. We got that one coming out too. But I don't know, Shawn. Do you think
like 3 of those?
Yeah, I don't know. There's like 1,000 of them, like coming down the pipe now. But is that like what we're looking for? Like, especially because with Guild Wars 2, you have the dodge ability, right? Which a lot of MMOs don't really have that role. So it's like, is it going to be, you think, like a lot of tells and rolls and things like that? Like more of an action MMO, Shawn?
Yeah, I think in the boss fights it will. I think you'll have everything else. You have all those other elements in the game, but people still want those boss fights. They still want to get in there and kind of get together as a group and have to do, even if they're taking out the Holy Trinity, which is we're talking about the tank and spank. They're not going to have tanks, so that's not going to be an element. But if they're taking that out, it's not going to be so cut and dry as having that Trinity to take down a boss. So I think the boss fights will be much more interesting in trying to figure out how to take them down.
Ed, you're a big PvP guy. You don't even usually level in PvE, and I know you're kind of just dipping your toe into the Guild Wars universe, and you're kind of like just learning about it, right? What you're seeing though from an overall scope of things, especially in the PvE side, are you getting intrigued by it, or is it still the PvP that you're much more like in tune with?
Yeah, I do actually like PvE. I did a lot of raid tanking back in the day in WoW, but I like the dynamic system, and it would be fun to play a game where, as Shawn and Elizabeth described, it's not just simple tank and spank, and your position matters. You've got to move around a lot. Like in most game with boss fights, if you're not the tank, if you're DPS, all you do is you run up to the mob or sit in a place and just hit buttons. That's all you do, and you manage your aggro table. It's not really that dynamic. Where if there isn't an aggro table and the boss is moving around and he might target you and you have to react accordingly, I think it would make it a lot more dynamic. I mean, my biggest beef with the whole tank and spank and Holy Trinity thing is that the fights are very predictable. Don't stand in the glowing stuff, hit the boss, run away when he does something, etc. It's just not it's very predictable. Whereas, fights where you have to pay attention to what's going on and there's no quote-unquote true aggro, true tank, I think are a lot more fun.
And that's going to be really interesting, yeah. With no true tank and healer in that kind of respect, it's going to be a lot of like shifting around, a lot more communication, I think, than normal, and like shifting roles on the fly more than just knowing your exact specific role within the group. All right, next up from Paulo Killjoy Agua says, on February 20th, the press involved with the beta, guess we're not press, will be able to talk about their experience with the game. Why do you think ArenaNet still isn't lifting the NDA if our beta is soon after? I don't know, Shawn. When would you expect NDA to drop by the current timetable?
For everyone else, I'm not really sure. I think that they're going to do this in waves, and they haven't really said anything about kind of lifting the NDA for the other, for everyone else not press. I'm not really sure why they do this, because every other game company does it differently. There are a lot of them that don't let press in until the very last week before they launch the game. There are some that kind of do it in between, and ArenaNet, of course, is doing it, letting this NDA drop first, which I think is pretty exciting. I mean, I'm excited personally.
Yeah, I mean that means people are going to get a lot of news. You're going to see a bunch of stuff, just not on Gamebreaker.
Yeah. Well.
Anybody else have anything to add? I'm going to move on that one because I don't know what else there is to talk about that. All right, David Hollingsworth. How long will it take to hit level cap? I don't know if anybody on the panel has a time machine or anything. I'm not
Oh
sure.
yeah,
if
I've got it in the back room.
Do you? Do you? All right.
Yeah, I'll just whip it out.
Can you just go to the future really quick and figure out how long it's going to take to hit level? No, seriously, not joking around. But I know none of us really know, but I guess MMO players are like, there's that crazy 1% who like go to max level in like 3 seconds. How many days after launch do you think we'll actually see the first person at max level?
I don't even want to know.
Yeah, I think you'll see the crazies get it in 3 to 5 days.
3 to 5?
Yeah.
You're saying 3 to 5? Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, we're all going 3 to 5. Actually, I'll go. What's the Price is Right thing? What do you go like $1 under? Isn't that the rule?
Can't go over.
2 and a half.
Go over. I'll go 2 3/4. I got you. Yeah, I don't know. We haven't heard anything about that at all, and that's not really something that they would release any kind of information on. They're not going to be like, hey guys, it takes like 30 seconds to get to endgame now. It's not, oh, I'm sorry, there is no endgame. Do you think? No, seriously. Here's the question though. So this is maybe for Shawn and Elizabeth more, because you're coming from Guild Wars 1. Do you think that the community of Guild Wars players, the veterans who played 1, do you sense that they have a little bit less of that mentality than trying to just rush to endgame than other MMOs?
I don't know. I think there's schools of thought on both sides there. I mean, they're the people who will, are playing right now just to build up their characters, and then they're just going to explode when the game launches, and they're, just going to go nuts. And then there are the ones that are just going to, role play or do this or that and just kind of take their time. It's it's such a big community, the Guild Wars community right now, that there's just such a variance in there.
I mean, I guess Guild Wars 1 too. The difference was obviously you could start a max level character in PvP, obviously right out of the box. So, are they doing that again on this Guild Wars too? Do we know? We've no idea.
Kind of. You can take any PvE character to PvP and play PvP, either World vs. World, where you will be your own level, or in the competitive. Oh Lord, this might have changed. I think it's still true that you can take it and do the competitive 5-man, and everybody will be at a basic equal level.
And that's straight out of the box.
Yes, so you'll be able to run right into it and not grind to 80 and then jump into PvP.
So I wonder if David is trolling us, and that's sort of like a trick question, because really the answer was supposed to be your max level out of the box. I don't know, possibly, but probably 3 to 5 days if you're going to actually level your character, I guess. Sounds pretty good. We'll just go with it. All right, next up from Tumas. Yeah, sure. Okay. Tumas says, since Holy Trinity doesn't play a role in the game, how are the team fights going to work? Stuff like aggro and boss hits, for instance. If elementalists get hit, won't he be one-shotted because he is clothy? And if not, won't that be OP in PvP? It's an interesting question, especially, again, coming from players who may not know a whole lot about Guild Wars 2. I mean, usually the mage class is the glass cannon. I mean, Ed, what do you think? Lack of the Holy Trinity. Lack of roles.
Well, I mean, I think it's fine. Like, if you look at a class like an Elementalist, it has range nuking capabilities, so it's not going to be standing right next to the mob. And generally, you can watch based on the mob's facing when it starts moving towards you if you need to kite or do something. And, usually the ranged classes are given some tools to help them with gap control. So I think it's not going to be an issue as long as you play smart. Now, I do see people inexplicably nuking mobs or bosses really close so they don't need to be, and those people will probably get one-shotted, but that's an issue with the player, not the class.
I think one of the biggest things about all these questions about tanking the Holy Trinity that I don't know if Elizabeth, we didn't talk about this last week, if you have any other insight that we don't know, but one thing that I've been so curious about is how armor's going to work. How is the armor going to work?
So far as I know, they're really opting to let people customize. What they have right now are these sets of insignias that you can put on your armor that build collectively towards bonuses. So if I have, whatever pyromancer insignia, every single insignia I add onto my armor will make my fire magic that much stronger. And hopefully they'll have enough of that you can really go into a lot of customization with your armors and match that with weapon specialization and like what you put on your utility bar. You can find a lot of variety in your different classes, which I think is going to lead to a lot of people playing the same roles very differently.
So you guys think with this customization that like an elementalist or a mage type of character is usually a glass cannon clothy is going to be able to like kit out their armor to actually be able to tank?
Yeah, I think that you have to kind of throw out all of the, the ideals that you have about a glass cannon with Guild Wars 2, because not only do they have things like earth, magic, where they basically can build themselves up into a rock. I mean, not literally, but and
Pretty close.
pretty close, yeah. But there's also just the fact that they can heal themselves. There's wards, there's things like that that they can buff themselves with. One thing to remember is every class has its own heals, and that's why the Trinity isn't there. Every class can be their own Trinity, I guess you could say. So with that in mind, like, that's what we have to keep in mind all the time when we're a lot of people are so confused about, well, if there's no tank, how am I going to tank? If there's no this, how am I going to do that? Well, every class is that. So, it's, I don't know. It's like the group dynamic of the Holy Trinity isn't there. That's what you don't have to worry about. But individually, you should be fine.
Ed, how does this sound coming in from like a PvP perspective, just on paper, when you hear this about these roles, balance and things like that? Does it worry you, or does it actually sound really refreshing?
I think what was interesting in SWTOR is that the classes tend to be really well-rounded. So even the healers could meaningfully CC or DPS, and a lot of the non-healing classes had good defense or CC capability. And I think actually it's created a much more well-rounded gameplay. And I think what Shawn's mentioning is makes it much more interesting. If you have classes, people are mentioning in chat room, and like what Shawn said, you have Earth attunements for armor defense, and it sounds like the water-based attunement as well has some defensive capability. So it would allow for a lot more variety in gameplay. As Elizabeth was saying, people might play the same class very differently depending on how they trait, etc., and what abilities they're using. So I think that would create much more opportunities for creative or unusual gameplay, whereas in most games it's very predictable because classes are built a certain way. And they even, like what Shawn was saying, people think of casters as being a glass cannon. Well, that's a stereotype that's been enforced by game mechanics in the popular games, but that doesn't mean that it has to be that way in Guild Wars 2.
All right, next up from Joshua Bargo. Joshua says, with dungeons containing dynamic events themselves, will complete failure of an event chain lead to being kicked from the dungeon, or can anyone speculate on how dungeon event failure will affect explorable mode? I doubt you'll be able to completely fail a dungeon. Do you guys think that's a possibility?
Well, I think you would be able to just not be able to progress if your team just has all your armors damaged and you're really just not doing well. I can see circumstances where you wouldn't be able to progress, but I don't think you're going to have, the way this is worded sounds kind of odd, having dynamic events in dungeons. I don't think you're going to have centaurs running through while you're doing the Catacombs dungeon. I don't think that's how the world's set up. There will, I assume, and it seems to be hinted that there will be events going on within dungeons, kill this boss who just showed up, or figure this out, or stop this from happening. And yeah, stop failing to complete one of those things would be like failing to kill the final boss. So I can see how you would fail. I just don't think it's like this random thing that's going to happen and just come out of nowhere.
Shawn, any thoughts on that?
I would really hate to speculate on it, just because anything, it's so up in the air at this point. I don't know. I'd hate to speculate, because then when I speculate, people are like, well, Shawn said. So.
Well, they all know you work for ArenaNet, right?
Oh, that's true.
That's right. You forgot about that.
Side.
You're actually the developer. You're everything. Yeah, the beard is programming right now as we speak. All right, next up from Oscar Ivan Hernandez. Oscar asks, I was wondering how people are going to obtain the best gear in the game if there's no actual endgame or raids. Do we know anything? No. Anybody got a time machine? Elizabeth, jump into time machine.
Yeah, I'll be right back, guys.
Hang on. We're going to take this commercial break for a time machine run. I don't know. Is anyone,
time machine looks like a window. I know it might double as a window, but it does look like a window.
Yeah, it's actually back behind the shade over there. I had to hide it because it's a secret.
Any ideas? Have we heard anything about crafting gear? Do we know if craftable gear could possibly be the best gear in game, or is it going to be dungeons, or any speculation or any thought? PvP, maybe, perhaps?
I've read something about the crafting professions that they didn't want to make crafting, like in a lot of games, if you're crafting, there's a lot of tedium in just crafting stuff for the sake of leveling up, blah, 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 and you get a lot of throwaway gear. And then I read some comments from the developer that they didn't want it to work that way. If you craft something, even if you're no longer using it, it might be of use to somebody else, which sounds interesting because that might break the whole BOP, BOE paradigm type of thing, soulbound type of thing.
Oh, you think they might actually just do away with it?
Well, I don't know, but I would be happy to see if they did, because I think there's just a lot of artifacts from games that are in place, and even the way this question was framed about best gear, endgame PvE ratings, so this person's looking at it based from the lens of an experience with the way traditional MMOs are built, you know? And it would be nice to see a lot of that stuff actually done away with, because it doesn't actually make for better gameplay or more fun game experience.
It's great when we get these questions though, because it shows the perspective of like people watching the show and like how people are sort of kind of confused as to what Guild Wars 2 is actually going to be. I know there's the hardcore people in the chat room going like, "You guys are crazy! Stop asking these questions." But there's a lot of people out there who are like kind of confused. Really quick, donations. We run Gamebreaker on donations. We rely heavily on donations. So if you guys like this episode of Guild Wars, GuildCast, Guild Wars, whatever we call the show, I forget. Got a mental block. Please consider a donation. Come over to Gamebreaker.tv. There's a little button there that says donate. You can send us $1, $5, whatever you can spare is awesome. It goes right back into making all of this work so we can create more shows for you guys. Got a brand new website coming and lots of cool stuff coming right around the corner really soon. Next up, Ricky Hannigan. Ricky Hannigan, I think I know this guy. I think I've seen him somewhere before. I'm not really sure where. But Ricky asks, how much will situational weapons be relied on? Will there only be certain situations where an engineer wants to use their flamethrower, or do you think they'll be able to utilize it whenever they want to without suffering too harsh of penalties? What do you think, Shawn? What do you think about situational weapons?
I hope so. I hope that's in there. You know, I mean, the skill bar itself is based on the item that you hold anyway. You know, the skills open up differently if you hold an axe versus a flamethrower or whatever. So I would hope that it would be, and actually they've said this, that it's a lot of, you know, oh, this guy's coming, I need to switch weapons. You know, a lot of stuff you can do on the fly like that. So yeah, I would definitely say that that would be situational.
Elizabeth, anything to add?
I think as an engineer, I'm going to want to use a flamethrower all the time. So, really though, I think the profession is meant to give you a lot of freedom, and you know there will definitely be cost and benefit to each thing you use. But I think that you're going to see that you're able to make the game play the way you want it to play for the most part.
What do you think of that in PvP from that kind of perspective, Ed?
I think, as John was saying, it would add a greater element of dynamism. You don't just use the same weapon and mash the same buttons. You look at which opponents you're stacked up against, and whether you're in, you know, outnumbered, if you're trying to, you know, force people back, etc. You might switch your weapons situationally because it makes sense, and I think that will make for much better gameplay.
Because a lot more of a skill-based game.
Yeah, that's right. You have to use the right tool for the job. Whereas, you know, my skill bar doesn't change regardless of whether I'm using a two-handed sword in most games, or an axe, or hammer, or whatever. And maybe in Guild Wars, there are different effects tied to different weapons. So, you know, if you're in an AoE situation, if you're in a CC thing where you want to hamstring people or stun them, maybe you switch weapons. I mean, I think that would be a lot more interesting than the way that most games have been implemented right now, where it doesn't really matter what weapon you're using, it's just the stats on the weapon. And again, even my saying the word stats, that's like a bad word. That's like a stereotype that's been ingrained in my brain through years of playing these other games.
We'll break them down. We'll break these stereotypes down. I'm still calling everybody tanks and everything. Don't worry about it, man. All right, next up from Sam Barrel Roll. What's going to be in the collector's edition? Elizabeth, how's that time machine working out? You got that time machine ready?
Yeah, it needs a couple more minutes to warm up.
It's still warming up. It's still
88 miles per hour.
There you go. That's it. Well, how about this? We have no idea, obviously, what's going to be in the collector's edition. They haven't announced it. I don't even know. We can speculate. What did they do? What kind of collector's editions did they put out in the past for the original Guild Wars? Or did they?
Yeah, they did. It's actually mostly mini pets. They'll throw some mini pets in there. What else? Oh, some special emotes like the glowy hands kind of things.
Any sort of books, authenticators, anything like that we're used to?
I've actually never bought one myself. I just saw the in-game stuff, so I don't know. I'm sure that they had like art books and stuff like that.
Elizabeth, do you have any of the collector's editions?
No, actually, I came too late to the game for that, and I didn't feel like spending $300 for one.
It was $300. Oh, because you didn't buy it at launch, so
something like that for a factions one. It's ridiculous.
$300? Is that that's because you can't get them anymore? Like that? What was the original cost?
I could be pulling that out of somewhere, but let me check.
No, yeah. If you go on eBay, they're insane.
Yeah, they're just ridiculous.
Wow.
I was really gung-ho about it for a while. I was like, no, I want the glowing hands.
But that's kind of cool. No. So they're real collector's editions, not like the Blizzard. You can still pick them up, and it's just like $80.
Right. Oh, they did have skill bar pins. That was part of the
yeah.
collector's editions, and I have some of those now.
I gotta say, one thing that they could put into the collector's edition that would totally make me buy it is that hardcover art book from all of the concept art. The concept art book that they had put out a while back was unreal. I will totally buy a collector's edition if that is in there. Hopefully it's just
Here, I
not.
thought you were going to say Sparkle Pony, because that's your, you're Mr. Sparkle
There
Pony.
are no sparkle ponies, Ed. There's no disco lions in Guild Wars 2. There's fast travel, there's no mounts. I've learned this over my 9 episodes of Guild Wars GuildCast. All right.
Actually, Guild Wars does have sparkle animals. They're celestial animals.
Yes.
But they're not sold in any stores. So.
They're mini sparkles.
They're not sold in any
They're
stores.
mini Sparkle animals.
Yeah,
Is
they're
there
like
a-
mini
Gary,
pets.
there's room for you yet in Guild Wars 2.
Is there a black market for these
Celestial
things?
pets. Yeah.
All right, next up from Paul McMillan. Paul says, is there some kind of talent tree system in Guild Wars 2 that lets you specialize your class into what you really want to focus on? An elementalist buffing their fire abilities, for example? What do we know about this, Elizabeth?
We know that there are traits, but they've had many different things said about them. The trait system has been one that's kind of, so far as I know, evolved the most. And I don't know if we have a final kind of, this is what traits are. For a while, when it was first at PAX, I think 2 years ago, you could actually slot traits to different skills. So if I wanted this AoE skill to also have projectiles, I could do that with a trait. So that was a really good way to make sure that you were really specifying and specializing in your profession.
You think they're going to go totally off the mark and not have talent trees like anyone's used to? Just break them. They're trying to break the mold across the board and just get rid of it?
They might make talent trees a bad word, just like they made quests a bad word and tank a bad word and all this other stuff. So.
So you think they'll just take it out of their vocabulary and say we don't like to use that word, but it'll kind of be in there in some sort of fashion. Do you anticipate that it's going to be in there some way, Shawn?
I don't know. You know, they didn't really do that with Guild Wars 1. And that's one of those things they tried to get away from in Guild Wars, you know, away from World of Warcraft. But I think that they're doing things a little differently with Guild Wars 2, so we'll have to wait and see.
Just a little differently. All right, next up from Robert Lyons. Robert asks, are there equipment vanity tabs? Meaning, say I have a set of armor I really like the looks of, then I get a set that has better stats but looks stupid. Can I display the armor like while wearing the armor that is better? So do they have a clown setup? I know they have a pretty robust armor setup. Do we know about actually moving stats over to other sets?
Yes, we do. There are these nifty things called transmutation stones that you'll be able to use to merge 2 pairs of armor so you have the looks of one and the stats of the other. And so that's one way for people to be like, no, I really like this set, but I don't want to be gimped because it's bad stats. So that's one way moving forward where that's going to be possible. I think they also have town clothes, so you can buy an outfit that displays while you're not in combat sort of thing.
Ed,
So they actually have 2 ways around that.
Hey, Ed, that makes a really interesting for PvP scenario, huh? You could be like rolling around in just, you know, some town's garb.
Yeah, I would look like a peasant, man. That's my way of baiting people in. You know, underneath this like shabby like wool tunic is in fact heavy plate mail armor, but you just can't see it. I look like a farmer.
Isn't pretty much everybody hardcore into PvP going to do that? Why would you not?
Yeah.
You would never want your
It'd be
opponents
like a
to
big
know.
peasant battle.
Yeah, you would never want your opponents to know what you're actually wearing. So why do they not believe? Do they not feel that the silhouette is important for PvP? Because I know other MMOs feel that it's like super important that the silhouette is very. You're able to distinguish what is on the battlefield from a distance.
That's actually something that's been a huge complaint on forums is people saying, I'm not going to be able to recognize who I'm up against. Something that's important to note is that you have to merge like types. So as a heavy armor character, I can't merge my armor with a light armor class. Like I have to merge heavy with heavy, and you can't make a sword look like a bow or anything. So you're not going to be able to trick people really. It's much more of a vanity sort of thing. And that's important to keep in mind. But there have been a lot of people saying that the silhouettes are being lost to the wayside and that that's a problem.
Okay, so like if you can only mix heavy with heavy, at least if they'll probably make the silhouettes to the point that you can at least distinguish a heavy armor set. You at least know kind of what it is, even though I guess you're just going to assume that the stats are uber, just to be safe.
Yeah.
No peasant plate mail then.
No
Where did
peasant
that
plate
go?
mail. Nope.
Yeah.
All right. Last up from Evan Robert Johnson Robertson. Almost off the screen with that name. What will the frequency of event failure be? I'm just worried that they make events too easy due to large amounts of players not coordinating events and deeming them too difficult. I think it's a fair concern since these events scale up, with the number of players. I mean, ArenaNet can't necessarily expect people to be coordinated, can they? I mean, really? Is that asking too much?
It'll all be balanced in the end anyway. I mean, we start playing, and if it's too hard or too easy, they're always going to make tweaks to it. That's the beauty of an MMO. I say beauty in quotes, actually.
Beauty. I mean, Elizabeth, do you think there's any danger that there might be just a bit of a Zerg DPS race?
That might be possible. I don't know. I think you're going to see so many people who are capable of playing either ad hoc groups or singly that, I mean, it doesn't matter if there are 30 centaurs rushing at us, if there are 15 of us and I can take those 2 on my own and someone else can take 2 on their own. I think they're going to want to encourage players to play together, but I don't think you're going to find them nerfing themselves because they're worried about people failing.
It's going to be interesting.
Could be wrong.
Could be interesting. Ed Park, thanks for coming on the show this week, buddy. We got to have you back on more with some PvP talk. I want your insight on the P versus P. Follow Ed on the Twitter at Togrim, Taugrim. Go to Togrim.com, watch all his guides. He's doing SWTOR, but he's looking at Guild Wars. He's looking at the Guild Wars.
Playing Guild Wars, will be.
You liking what you're seeing so
later.
far?
Okay.
You're dipping your toe in the Guild Wars. You liking what you're seeing?
Yeah, I watched a lot of the footage from some of the gaming conferences and the ones from, just from various sites and stuff. It's been interesting to look at, I mean, I didn't play Guild Wars 2, I played Ion, so the artwork and the game animations look fantastic. And I like some of the thinking they've done around the game mechanics. It's very non-conventional, but in ways that make sense.
We're going to have to do an all P versus P episode really soon where we just go over the WVW stuff. I'm sure that's going to be interesting. Elizabeth, follow her on the Twitter at?
Elizabeth Claire.
Elizabeth Claire.
Yep.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. Again,
My pleasure.
Again. And of course, it's Mr. Shawn Schuster, editor-in-chief of Massively.com. Go to Massively. Follow him at Epic Beard on the Twitter.
I also want to point out that Elizabeth is our new Guild Wars columnist at Massively.
Oh, congratulations!
Thank you.
New
I'm
Guild
thrilled
Wars
to be there.
columnist at Massively.
So thrilled.
Now it all makes sense.
Awesome.
And you can follow me on the Twitter at Gary Gannon. Come over to Gamebreaker.tv, sign up for the forums, all that good stuff. You can follow Gamebreaker TV at Gamebreaker TV. And like I said, lots of cool stuff coming in the next couple weeks. I'll start, you follow my Twitter because it'll be like late night. I'll be working on new stuff, secret stuff that I don't really show people, and I'll just send out tweets. So you probably want to follow me if you want to see what's going on. We'll be back next week, every single Thursday at 6 PDT for more GuildCast. Episode 10, right around the bend. See you all next week. Maybe we get some news next week from the ArenaNet. Come on, ArenaNet. Beta. Let's go. See you next week. Okay. Stop.